This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast. This is part 2 of Season 3, Episode 1 of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. Part 4, Special Effects. On Tales from the Crypt, we had production designer Greg Melton to imagine for us what the Crypt world looked like. To imagine the special makeup effects that were so essential to Crypt world, we had special effects master Todd Masters. But while we brought Greg North with us, because our budget was cut to accommodate casting Dennis Miller, wanting $1 million to be in our movie, even though we didn't want him, we couldn't afford to bring both Greg and Todd Masters with us. And so, we left Todd back in Los Angeles. We held our breath and took our chances with a small, local special effects team led by a very talented, but at that point, inexperienced special effects artist named Chris Nelson. Chris really is a first-rate special effects guy, and occasionally an actor. He's in Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill 2. He plays Tommy Plimpton, the bride's Uma Thurman's husband-to-be, before Bill massacres the whole wedding. He's very good. Where were we? Oh, right. The first challenge was a mechanical tongue gag. Vampire Angie swaps spit with a Bordello patron, but the kiss suddenly turns horrifying when Angie's tongue slides all the way down the guy's throat and then bursts out through his chest. Yeah, gruesome, but hilarious. And we needed it to be more than just good.
You have to trust that whoever you're going to use to do X, Y, or Z does it really well, especially when you get to effects. And I thought we felt he did it okay. It came off okay. But we didn't go into this knowing that it was going to be okay. And we can't really afford for this, and then especially the ending, not to be okay. And of course, Todd had always delivered for us on the series.
Really?
And so we felt more comfortable, saying, let's get Todd here.
Some movie sets are a total pleasure to be on. There's a cohesiveness, a sense of family. It's us against the world. No such feeling ever overwhelmed the Bordello of Blood set. While some of the cast commingled and hung out together, our leads pretty much kept to themselves. Dennis kept to Dennis, Erica kept to Erica, and Angie kept to Sly. But then our production office in Vancouver began to get calls from the Assassins production office in Seattle asking us if there was some way to hold Angie for the weekends. Hold her to do what, we wanted to know? Study her lines? Do her homework? What were we supposed to be here, her mom? Can't help you there, is what we told the Assassins said, and we tried to pretend we hadn't heard what we'd clearly heard. At the same time, an issue larger even than Sly and Angie began to loom over us. Dennis. Once we got rolling, what was happening?
Well, I sort of, put all that stuff aside, the problems with him and everything, and I basically tried to approach it one-on-one as a director to an actor, trying to make a movie, trying to make a scene, trying to make a shot, and dealt with him in that way. And then when he would bring up, hey, I need to go, and I would say, no, we're finishing this. And then sometimes he would let it go, and sometimes we would get into it. It was very painful. As I said, when we first started talking about maybe even doing this, I don't know if I want to do this because, most of the recollection of making this was very painful until you pointed out that there were some very funny things, which I had to agree with you. But it was a very painful process for me. He was probably the cause of the main amount of pain, although others participated as well.
Who comes to mind?
Erica.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Stallone's girlfriend.
Angie.
The other actors I thought were fantastic.
We cast them.
Yeah, and we had conversations before we cast them. Even when Dick Donner suggested, how about talking to
Corey Feldman.
We had made an episode with Corey. Again, at Dick asking. He didn't tell us. He asked.
Yes.
We did that. And then, I had a conversation with Corey before we did the show, before we hired him. And he was gung-ho. He was on board. He wanted to participate. He wanted to do the best he could do. And he was great, as was the priest, Chris Sarandon. Couldn't have been better. He was a delight to work with. And we had Aubrey Morris, who was the delight of delights to work with.
Indeed.
So we did have some moments where we had fun and some great give and take with the actors, but those three made life very difficult. And unfortunately, they were in most of the scenes.
Dennis was challenging because he didn't really want to be there.
Well, he wasn't often there mentally. I don't care if he wanted to be there. I didn't really care if he wanted to be there or not. I knew that. My job was to get a performance out of him regardless. I would often push him. Let's make this adjustment. Let's do another one. I never would say to him, let's just do another one, because he would then challenge that decision, which he shouldn't have challenged, but he would. And I would always say, that was much better. I want it this way, and I want you to turn that way, or I just need a little bit more of a whatever. And then he would do it. But if I just said, okay, let's do another one, no.
Actors improvising their dialogue is not a new thing. Hey, I'm a Groucho Marx fan, and there's a very famous story about Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright George S. Kaufman standing backstage when Animal Crackers, the Marx Brothers' second film, was still on Broadway. Groucho, Chico, and Harpo were famous for tossing the script entirely and making it all up as they went along, something the Marx Brothers writers, well, they didn't appreciate. So, one day, backstage at Animal Crackers, a friend is telling George S. Kaufman a story when Kaufman shushes him. Wait, he says, I think I just heard one of the original lines. With Dennis, no such thing happened. One of the most important jobs on any movie set is script supervisor. On Bordello, we had a very good script supervisor named Laura Fox.
I always tell people that I'm the eyes of the camera. Whatever the camera records, I have to record it on paper for the editors so that they can edit it in, because film is shot in pieces and it's not shot continuously. So there has to be a paper trail. I have to watch the eye line that the actors are looking the right way. They can't all be looking in the same direction, because if they go to cut, it won't make any sense that people be talking off screen.
Yeah. And I'm sure most of the audience has no idea how critical eye line is just to the internal logic of a scene.
Oh, I know. And on that, on Bordello of Blood, excuse me, I had a lot of trouble with, what's his name, Tom Priestley. He wouldn't listen to me about crossing the axis. And we were in the mortuary, and it was pretty tense. And I went in to tell him that he had crossed the axis, which was on a very important piece of dialogue. And he turned to me and he said, go home and watch TV. And I was so angry.
Oh,
I said,
dear.
Yes, that's exactly where I'm going. And I turned around, walked off the set, grabbed my chair and script, and headed for the parking lot. Poor Gil and the AD came running after me and saying, please, don't leave. And I said to Gil, I will come back as long as I don't have to talk to him. I will tell you everything, and you can relay the message. And he said, great.
I do remember occasionally while we were shooting, I would even look into the monitor and say to Tom, should I adjust the eye line to the left or to the right a little bit? I don't remember the specific about running after her, but I probably did. I mean, if she said we did, we probably did. Script supervisors historically, need to make their presence known in a very special way, in a very quiet way, to both the DP and the first and to the director, so that they can judiciously decide, oh, yeah, we should change this, or no, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to fix it in the cut. No, it's not affecting us because. And so over the years, the one thing I've noticed is with script, and I've been very fortunate, I've been able to get script supervisors that I had a great relationship with in the interview. And we actually talk specifically about how we talk to each other when things have to be said to each other that may not be terribly pleasing to one or the other. I said, that's historically the nature of the script supervisor. You're saying to me, this is wrong. And I'm saying, hey, either it doesn't matter, or I know, but it's okay, or, oh, whoops, I got to change. Thank you. So it's very likely that we did run out after her, because I didn't want to, I was frightened enough directing the movie. I didn't want to start thinking about, oh my God, I now have to be the script supervisor as well.
The script supervisor's job is complicated, fiddly, and multitasking intensive to begin with. And now into the mix, Laura had to keep track of every one of Dennis's improvs. If I improv hello one take and goodbye the next, they're not going to cut together. And what are the other actors supposed to do when their lines stop making organic sense?
Well, I tried to write as much down as I possibly could, but because timing the scene and watching the action and trying to write the ad-lib dialogue down, it was very difficult.
She had experience actually with an actor notorious for improvising. She had done Jumanji with Robin Williams.
Right.
And she made an interesting observation, the statement.
The way with Robin Williams, he would give the director the script, and then he would ask, "Can I do my versions?" And so I had a tape recorder that I had attached to my headset, and I recorded all his dialogue for the subsequent scenes that he like the master scene.
Right. This was on Jumanji. So you had experience with working with an actor very well known. I mean, Robin Williams improv was where all his genius lay.
Yeah. Well, I was warned about that, and that's why I got this little portable tape recorder I put on my belt. And then, but the thing with Robin was, once he said in the scene that he was improving, when we went to close-ups, he was letter perfect.
Doing the same improv?
Yes.
Wow.
From the master to the close-ups, he was letter perfect, because I started typing it out because I typed my notes at the end when we were lighting.
Sure.
And his close-up dialogue matched the master perfectly.
We obviously made the wrong move. We should have gotten Robin Williams.
So the problem with Dennis is that it was different each and every time, which of course made cutting anything together really hard.
And he couldn't remember. He couldn't remember what he did in the previous take.
No, and Laura, would be furiously dribbling what she could remember of him saying, "Hey, she's also got to be timing the scene. She's got to be looking over here, looking over there. She really does not have time to be trying to remember what Dennis is adding or subtracting from our script."
Yeah.
Erica.
Well, what can I say? I mean, Erica should never have accepted the role. She didn't want to be what the part called for. She had a very strange analysis of her own self at the time. She was a Playboy centerfold, but didn't want to do nudity, didn't even want to do anything suggestive. It's like she became, the church lady. She did the movie for all the wrong reasons, because she wasn't thinking about the performance. She was thinking about everything else.
It was a good payday for her. We paid her more than we had in the budget.
Yeah, but I mean, she once said to me, we were setting a shot, and I think she said to me, "Is the camera looking at my skirt?" I looked at the monitor and I said, "Absolutely not." "Are you sure?" And I said, "No, I want you to be sure. Come here. I'm going to go sit in a chair. I'm going to sit in a chair the way you were sitting. Can you see anything like if I had a skirt on?" "Well, it's different." And she looked, and then she came off. "Well, it's different. I can't tell." I said, "Well, I can. And I'm telling you, I'm not interested in that. I don't want that in my movie. And we're not doing that." And then she was okay for that moment for me to get the shot. But that's what we were dealing with.
Having been exploited, having suddenly realized, when you realize that you've been exploited, that's got to be horrific. How you thought about yourself suddenly, is a problem, and how you're thinking about yourself is now in crisis and transition, and how are you going to think about yourself tomorrow?
Yeah, but that's okay. Then don't do the job. Don't
Indeed.
take on the role that you read and you said you'll do it, and then the first thing you say is, "I won't do it."
Yeah, I want to give the benefit of the doubt, but then you took a gig with a movie called Bordello of Blood.
Right.
Come on. Everyone's got to be a little responsible for their own shit.
Right.
All right.
Angie tried to be a team player. Angie tried to be, because she wanted to be an actress in her own right.
Surely.
And she wanted to convince us that she could do that, and she would do that. But then what happened was, she would go visit Stallone every weekend in Seattle, and she would come back on Monday, and most of Monday I would have to spend trying to undo what she had rehearsed with Stallone, because she sounded a little bit like Rocky. All of a sudden she had a Brooklyn accent. Most of Monday I would have to say, no. Let's go back. That's not your character. Yeah, but this is how I rehearsed it with Stallone.
I have a memory, once Dennis began improvising, and I'm sure that got to Seattle before the trips to Seattle stopped, she would come back with some new dialogue. If Dennis doesn't have to worry about the script, why do I have to worry about the script?
We started off, she was a sweetheart. We started off, she, was very responsive to direction, and, we had conversations and discussions, and she understood what I was saying and I understood what she was saying. And then we would come up with, how to resolve it so that it worked for both of us. It was great. And then when she started making the trips to Seattle, it became much more confrontational. And I'll never forget, there was one, you may remember this as well. We were, the trailer, I forgot where the trailers were, but her trailer was like on the other side of a little park where our trailer was. And I was outside my trailer, and I could see she was outside her trailer and she was on the phone. And it was very animated phone conversation. And then she hung up and went into her trailer. And then about 5 minutes later or less, my phone rang, and it was Joel. And Joel was giving me, a lot of shit about Angie. And I said, wait a second, you just were on the phone with her, weren't you? You just got off the phone with her, didn't you? And he said, no. I said, no, you're lying. You're full of shit. I just watched her, very animated, talking to somebody, and it had to be you. And, I knew it. She had called him to complain about me. And, I just listened to Joel, and I basically told him to go fuck himself. I said, I'm directing a movie. You're not here. You're my producer, supposedly absentee, because Donner needs you so terribly much in Seattle. Okay, so I will do what I do. I'm the producer. I'm the director. I'm going to do what I do. And I think I hung up on Joel. And, we never really discussed it after that. But it was, I'll never forget that moment when I saw her animated, talking on the phone, and knowing in my head, she called Joel. And I bet you she's complaining about me. And then sure as shooting, within 5 minutes, the phone rings. I see her hang up. She stomps into her trailer. Bang, Joel's on the phone to me. I wasn't going to allow that to happen. I just have had it. If you wanted to fire me, go fire me. It's okay.
A little disappointing to hear, but in Angie's defense, she was in Stallone's thrall. She had no idea at the time that Stallone was betraying her.
Yeah, no idea.
If you look at the scene and you see all the levels of onion. Among the layers of onion, we became concerned that all of the fake blood we were using looked too thick in the dailies. It looked like pancake syrup. So I called Todd Masters. Help!
I remember you calling me up. For one, I was sort of surprised that everything went to Canada.
You know why that happened?
Right. And
bad reasons all the way around.
Whatever it was, but it was kind of funny in my perspective because I'm Canadian. And I'm like, well, I could legally go, but it was just like you guys are already there. And then all of a sudden you're calling up and you're going, hey, how do we make blood? I
know you're Canadian, and I've known this recently, but I did not know you were Canadian when...
I'm a really bad Canadian. I'm a terrible Canadian.
You got to be more obvious, dude.
I look like
Smell of maple syrup or something.
You asked me how to make blood. I'm just like, how to make blood? It's in the fucking title, and the blood's terrible. That's the question you're asking. What else is going on? And so that's when we said, well, why don't I just come up and see for myself?
Having Todd back really helped a lot. One of the scenes for which we really needed Todd's reliability was the torture chamber scene, and Todd got right to work on a terrific special effects gag that Gil wanted to do. I had said yes to Dennis every day. Every day he wanted to be shot out early. We said yes to him every single day.
Yeah.
And then this was the day of the torture chamber set. Yeah. And he was going to enter. So there was a cut because there was a stunt as he went over the railing, landed into the well of the torture chamber. Then he picked up an axe. And then he was going to bury it in Angie's shoulder. So then there was a lock off on the other side for a process shot.
Right.
We had 3 different pieces. And if we screwed up any one of those pieces, of course, we could take the whole day's work and throw it in the toilet. Per usual, Dennis would send his assistant to my office first thing in the morning, and she'd say the usual thing, oh, Dennis is so tired. Can we please shoot him out? And every day I'd go, yeah, sure. I'm sure she was expecting me to go, yeah. And I said, no, not today. She was like, what? I said, no. I said, look, and I will grant you, I didn't say it that nicely. I said, no, I can't, not today. And I was beside myself. I was not doing it in the kindest, most Zemeckis way possible. I said, look, I got a stunt. Here, he's going to have to go there. Then I got to pick up the axe, and I got to lock off shot on the other side. And I said exactly what I just said to you. If we screw up any one of these elements, I can take the whole day's work and throw it in the.
Right.
I said, no. She said, Dennis isn't going to be happy. And then I think triggered a little something in me. And I said, I don't care. And she went, okay. And she went out to the trailer and gave Dennis the bad news. Now, I had no idea that Joel was going to be visiting today. Not that it would have changed what I said, but Joel visited that day. And of course, the first place he went was to go see Dennis, to go see his star. His star. As soon as Joel walked into the trailer, the first thing that, he said, how are you doing? And Dennis said, I'm horrible because Catsy won't let me go. Whoa. Catsy won't let you go. What do you mean you won't let you go? Well, I'm tired. I'm doing my show and you got to shoot me out. And Joel said, what? You want to go and Catsy won't shoot you out? I'll take care of Cats. And then he walked down onto the set and he found me. In one of his big Joel voices, he said, Cats. And I was standing on the other side of the building, I think.
I wonder where I was.
You were working. You were setting up a scene.
Right.
You were doing what you're supposed to be doing. So now, of course, everyone who's not on the set working with you has now turned to watch me walk across the stage to my boss. Come here, Cats, come here. Okay, now I'm walking faster. And as he approached him, he said, I got to tell you something. Your people skills are shit. Oh my God, I've just experienced the most ironic moment of my entire life. Joel Silver has just told me that my people skills are shit.
Yeah.
To Joel's credit, really. And I will give Joel full credit at the end of this story. He saw that he had broken me down and now he needed to fix me. And he said, look, you're a star. You've got to do whatever your star wants. And he talked about Bruce Willis. Unfortunately, I'm so sad for what's happened to Bruce Willis and the aphasia. But he told a story about working with Bruce Willis on the Die Hard movies. Bruce Willis was a pain in the ass, but you got to do what your star wants. And he sees that that's not making me feel any better. And then he tells me another story, a Michael Jackson story. About Michael Jackson being on the set of a music video, and everyone in the crew is told, do not talk to Michael. If you talk to Michael, you get fired. Everyone agrees, cool. The assistant set deck has a broken arm. He's got a cast on his arm. And Michael walks up to the assistant and says, hey, what's wrong with your arm? And the set deck says, oh yeah, I broke it. They fired the set deck. The next day, Joel's telling me this story. The next day, Michael shows up to work with a cast on his arm in sympathy.
And he didn't know the guy had gotten fired?
Of course he knew the guy had gotten fired. But that was his reaction. He didn't go to the producers and say, give him his job back. He let the guy be fired, and he came in with his cast in sympathy for the guy who got fired because of him. And so Joel's point was, they're crazy. They're all crazy, you see? And Joel said, so he's going back to the hotel. You got to let him do whatever he wants. I went, okay. And the day's work did not turn out okay. We pretty much had to scrap that day's work, in part because we didn't have access to Dennis all day. And from that day onward, what little authority I had, teeny weeny itty bit of authority I had to tell Dennis anything, was gone. Every time I looked at Dennis, Dennis looked at me like he owned me.
No doubt.
And meanwhile, things were still happening down on that set in Seattle. Now, there's an urban legend about Sly Stallone, a live mic, his trailer, and a sex partner. Stallone, as far as I know, has never said this story never happened. The question is where, on what film set? There's always been a Vancouver connection to the story, and maybe this is it. Now, I hadn't heard this story before I did Bordello. When I heard it, it came from the set in Seattle, and it goes like this. Stallone finishes a scene and heads back to his trailer, unaware that his radio mic is still live. There's a young woman waiting for him there, and she gives Stallone a blowjob. But Sly is really particular about how he likes his hunters. And he tells the young woman to cup the balls, stroke the shaft, cup the balls, stroke the shaft. Next thing you know, a crowd has formed around the sound cart. The whole crew practically. The next morning, the story goes, Stallone walks onto the set to see the entire crew wearing t-shirts that say, cup the balls, stroke the shaft. Did it actually happen? I don't know. Did it happen on the Assassin set? I don't know. But I do know that not long after I heard that story from Seattle, Sly ended his relationship with Angie. Production manager Colleen Neistat.
When we spoke last, I couldn't remember the name of the theater that we were shooting at down on Hastings Street, and it was the Lux, and it burnt down subsequent, was been vacant and for a long time and used as a community garden subsequently. But you remember a scene she was in there as well, dressed in different outfits, doing her thing for Dennis Miller's character. And I do recall that we were shooting there when that all went down.
We were shooting at the Lux. We were on location at the Lux when the relationship ended.
Yeah.
Do you remember how he ended it with her?
No, I don't. I wasn't party.
From that point forward, of course, she was understandably a mess.
We had to deal with the aftermath of that. And the only thing we knew, because initially I was like, what happened? What's the problem? And then I said, guys, what's going on here? I mean, Angie, what happened? What are you so upset about? I mean, there's nothing we can't fix. What is it? And then she told me, Stallone and I are no more. I mean, she didn't go into any detail. And then she was very teary-eyed, and she just said, in a very tearful way, that's what happened. And I was like, fuck me, what do I do about this? How do I play this to get again, I'm trying to make a movie. I'm trying to get performance. So, I tried to be as kind as I could. And I said, this is an opportunity for us to make something special. You're not getting any more guidance from him, which I think is a blessing for both of us, not just for me. And I said, let's just continue and let's show him, and we'll make the best movie we can. What do you say? But then, as the day progressed, she would fall into lapses of melancholy, and it was very difficult to get a performance out of her. I'd have to stop. And I remember one or two times I would take her for a walk off the set, and we would just walk, around a little bit, and we would just chat about nothing. Meantime, I'm realizing my time is being suckered away, which is unfortunate because it impacted the shooting. But, there was nothing else I could do. I had to get her mind to a place where she could concentrate on character and what the task was at that particular moment.
Even when Stallone was gone,
he wasn't gone. Yeah.
Son of a bitch.
It was sad. It was a sad situation, for a number of years, I think after the movie, I would run into Angie at a restaurant or something, and she was always very grateful and also very sweet to me and to my wife. As time passed, we went our own ways.
I think the very next weekend is the weekend that I decided I had to get the fuck out of Dodge. I had to go back to LA to get a little sanity, which is nuts, which is craziness. Sly had already broken up with Angie. Everything was just going to hell. And I get on the Alaska Airlines flight. I'm the only passenger in first class, 3 rows of 2. So
right.
We were holding it for one last first class passenger. They'd given me my glass of whatever it was that I wanted to drink. Then the other first class passenger enters. It's Angie. Of course, I'm surprised, delighted, surprised. And I get up and say, hey, Angie. And I hug Angie. And, Angie is a beautiful woman. She's a supermodel. Yeah. And everyone on the plane is now tilting their head into the aisle to see who's the schlub the supermodel's kissing. And I got to tell you, it's so empowering. It's remarkable to realize that people are looking at you like, well, hey, you must be someone. A beautiful woman is hugging you.
Right.
And Angie then, she sits next to me. We're the only 2 passengers, and she sits next to me. And she spent the whole flight back to LA lamenting about Stallone.
Yeah.
I sat there the whole time thinking how we had betrayed her.
Yeah.
While I'm confessing, there's something else I need to get off my chest. It's the most painful irony in a story chock-a-block with damn stuff. The thing is, when Joel told me, "Cats, your people skills are shit," the irony wasn't actually Joel Silver telling me my people skills sucked. The irony was, he was right. A guy with crap people skills saw clearly that we had tons in common. All I had to do that day was act like a producer and tell Dennis's assistant, hey, you know what? Let me talk to Dennis. I'll explain it. I bet if I had done that, walked out to Dennis's trailer and had a simple conversation with the man, he would have understood why just that one day we needed him to hang around with us. Alas, I didn't do that. But back to the airplane. As Angie told me stories about the good times with her former fiancé, a line from one of Stallone's movies suddenly popped into my head like an earworm that wouldn't leave. The Lords of Flatbush. Mm-hmm. There's a scene where his girlfriend, he has a problem, and his girlfriend threatens, I'm going to tell everyone that you cry when you come. As Angie is telling me story after story about the good times with Sly.
Right.
And she was missing him, but glad that it was over because she was now aware that he had not been faithful to her.
Yeah.
And all I can think is he cries when he comes. It was the most painful plane ride I have ever experienced, sitting beside a remarkably beautiful woman and a lovely human being.
Yeah.
Who I had betrayed. Mia maxima culpa. Mr. Stallone, Sly, if I may, what you do in your private life is none of my business, unless you make it my business, which you did. That's my issue with you. I think your politics are stupid, but that's a whole other podcast. You're going to break up with your romantic partner. That's your deal. But you made us your co-conspirators in treating a very nice person like shit. Do better, please. At least grow the fuck up. And don't cry when you come. Part 5. Endings are never pretty. As Bordello's production went on like a rowboat ride to hell, a feeling of resignation settled over us. Resignation and frustration. Ed Tapia was Gil's assistant, and so much more. These days, he's an incredibly talented TV producer in his own right. As we speak, he's producing All-American Homecoming for the CW.
What I remember, Alan, is I remember Gil being so frustrated because no matter the schedule that we put together, Dennis would basically blow it up like the first 2 hours of the day, almost every day.
When you say blow it up, what do you mean?
He wouldn't do, something that was supposed to happen and you guys would have to try to work around it. He wouldn't hang on something or wouldn't walk a certain way or wouldn't go in an entrance the way Gil had blocked it out. And that Gil was constantly having to redo his shot list. I remember, just being so utterly frustrated for him because we couldn't seem to get a day that we had planned shot as we planned it because Dennis, every time he worked, he would blow it up.
Gil Adler.
Well, he didn't want to be there to begin with, and he wanted to leave as quickly as possible. So you'd think he would want to shoot as quickly as possible, but just to the contrary. We would set up a shot. We would rehearse it once or twice. We would say, okay, now we're going to release the cast and we'll set cameras and lights. And at that point, way until that point, he would go, I don't think I like that. I don't want to walk there. I don't want to. And I would say, well, where do you want to walk? What do you see yourself doing? What is the character dictating to you? And he would go, oh, I don't know. That's your job. I don't know. So he would just tell me what he didn't want, but he could never tell me what he did want.
It's quite amazing what $1 million won't buy you.
Yeah.
By now, if you recall, our schedule had flipped to accommodate Dennis's HBO show, which rehearsed in LA on Thursday and shot on Friday. That meant our work week, our Monday, was everyone else's Saturday. Well, that annoyed our Canadian crew who wanted to spend their weekends with their families and loved ones, not a bunch of mercenary American filmmakers with more money in their pockets than sense. The other actors in the cast also became frustrated with Dennis, because every day he'd ask us to shoot him out early so he could go back to the hotel and rest. That meant we'd shoot Dennis's side of every scene with the full cast, but when we turned around to film the other actors, Dennis would be gone, and they would have to act their scripted dialogue against Dennis's improvised dialogue being read by the script supervisor. Well, can I tell you, actors hate being disrespected like that. Corey Feldman felt especially disrespected.
Corey showed up, he knew his lines, he was professional,
He was Spencer Tracy.
Corey was great. Corey, I mean, he was right on there. He was ready to do whatever had to be done and put the time in and take direction and have a conversation. I remember
he had some good ideas and he was constantly pitching ways to make the character more interesting.
You remember how Corey's relationship with Dennis evolved? Because it did. I mean, I think Corey tried to, in being a professional, he tried to have a professional working relationship with Dennis. He tried to be friendly with him. And I think Dennis
wasn't interested.
That's a nice way of putting it, Gil. That's a really nice way of putting it, because Dennis was just a dick to him, well, from what I remember.
You could say that about his relationship with almost everybody.
I don't know if you guys even know this, but I was doing runs across the border to Blaine for Corey and Angie to get them both cigarettes and weed.
Oh, Ed, this is the whole point of the exercise. Start talking, Ed.
No, I mean, Corey couldn't get a Marlboros. I don't know if you remember, there was no Marlboros in Vancouver. And so I went over the border one day, believe it or not, to go to Taco Bell because there was no Taco Bell in Vancouver. And I came across the market and I came back with a carton of smokes of Marlboros, and I brought them back for Corey. And he was like, oh my God, thank you. Because he used to chain smoke Marlboros and he didn't like whatever he was buying in Vancouver. And so for like 4 straight weeks, I would hop over the border. I'd get cigarettes for him and for Angie. And twice I picked up a couple of joints for him too, from a friend of mine that I had in Blaine. And the weekend that I stopped doing it, they searched my car from top to bottom. I didn't have anything in the car. That's one of the reasons Corey was so in such good shape, because I was supplying him with the cigarettes. I was basically his prison bitch.
The thing we were most apprehensive about as we stumbled forward was whether or not our makeup special effects would play the way we needed them to. Hiring Dennis, an actor our audience didn't really care about, forced us to cut our special effects budget, which was stupid because makeup special effects are exactly what our audience cares about. Chris Nelson and his Canadian crew were all very talented. Chris is an award-winning special effects artist, but he wasn't that award-winning special effects artist at the start of his career when we hired him. But then, it simply isn't fair to expect expertise from people who aren't experts yet, especially when you know this about them. Not sure we could rely on our untested Canadian team, we flew Tales from the Crypt's longtime effects maven Todd Masters north.
I think I came up twice. The first time was when you had asked me the formula for blood, and then like the initial assessment, and then I came up for the ending to just kind of see, because I think at that point we knew we were going to take stuff back with us and pick it up. So I came up to kind of, witness the connective tissues. And I remember, I don't know if it was quite pleading, but I remember going to Gil a couple times. I remember coming to you and saying, like, let's not shoot the final stage of Angie because she looks like Witchy Poo. And if we shoot it, then we have to recreate it. And that's going to hurt because it's going to be the same thing, just as silly and costing probably the same amount, if not more, to do it over again. And so I was kind of like, well, if we just don't shoot it, then we can come up with a really cool finale. And it was just so much chaos at that point. It was just like, kind of get out of here and take it back to Van Nuys, and we kind of knew that we could really get our hands on it. Chris, who supervised the makeup effects in Vancouver, ended up winning an Oscar a couple of years ago for Suicide
Well, also
Squad.
to Todd's point, though, I don't know if everybody remembers, but at that point of the movie, when we were getting close to the end, we'd lost about 60% of our crew. People had started moving on.
Yeah.
And we were dealing with different people in costumes. We were dealing with different people in the regular makeup department. We were dealing with different people in grip and electric. Remember how many people had started bailing, about 4 weeks in?
Yeah, that one of the problems of shooting in Vancouver in those days was just that. As you got close to the end of a show, people didn't stay as they do in Los Angeles or in the States. They didn't stay till the end and then move on.
Yeah.
They started looking and sniffing around for other shows. And since there was so much work coming up, they would jump as soon as somebody made them an offer, because we had 2 or 3 more weeks of shooting and the new job was going to be, 5 weeks of prep and 5 weeks of shooting. It's 10 weeks versus 2 or 3 weeks. And they would just jump.
The movie's climax still lay ahead of us. So did a scene where Dennis's character learns that Corey's character and a few other vampires are hiding out at an old abandoned power plant. In the lead up to the climax, we were now working nights. Rarely a fun experience unless you're completely adapted to it, which we weren't. As we settled in for the night's work inside the power plant, Dennis began needling Corey. Whereas Corey previously had held his fire, this time in front of the whole crew, Corey fired back and got huge laughs. Dennis didn't like it.
I seem to remember it was Corey doing an ad lib on Dennis's riff, and we from Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live, like, and we are out of here. And Dennis really didn't like that and confronted him about it. And Corey was like, yeah, well, I thought it was funny. We all thought it was funny, actually. And Dennis took offense, is my recollection.
Who swung at whom? Do you remember?
My recollection is that Dennis was the one that was the instigator.
Dennis got all up in Corey's grill and Corey responded, and suddenly, I don't know if fists are flying accurately describes what happened. I don't think Dennis has fists are flying in him. Corey, I think, might.
Yeah, I think it was more like, pushing and shoving, like, keep me away from him.
But it escalated and
absolutely,
suddenly,
absolutely. Yeah. My recollection is that Dennis put hands on Corey first And then Corey reacted.
And the strange thing was that as Corey suddenly got the upper hand, and Corey clearly had the upper hand and was quite capable of hurting Dennis, nobody leapt to Dennis's defense.
No. No.
What are you saying? There is some justice in the world? What?
Yeah, as my memory was kind of watching the crew cheering on Corey. And then suddenly Lee Knipperberg suddenly realizing, oh, I can't let this happen, can I? Lee Knipperberg was our first assistant director, the adult on the set. Lee Knipperberg was the one who stepped forward and separated them.
Yeah, that's how I remember it.
A few days later, we took our shot at shooting the climax. The word futile springs to mind. Imagine if this group of professional filmmakers had thought for 2 seconds about what the downside might be to making a horror movie, a genre that works best at night, in a place as far north as Vancouver at the peak of summer, where the one thing in really short supply is night. Did I mention the word futile springs to mind?
I remember, Alan, you and I were aging very rapidly. And I also remember that we were shooting in the summer and we were shooting nights, and we realized one night while we were shooting that the nighttime was only 6 hours of a 12-hour day. And all of a sudden,
we did French hours.
Yeah. And all of a sudden we were shooting, at 4 o'clock in the morning as the light was coming into the building. And I remember we just panicked, and we were just shooting fast and furiously with as many cameras as we could pull out.
How many cameras did we run that night? It in our desperate
I think we only had 3 cameras.
We had 3. Yeah, we had 3. And it got so bad that Tom Priestley was getting frustrated, and he took over one of the spotlights.
It wasn't just one department's problem. It was just the whole thing just didn't have the grace of luck to it. There was the gods of filmmaking not shining brightly on us. So we packed up our toys and went home.
The climax was Dennis's last day.
I remember when we had his last shot, I'll never forget this. And he was done with the movie, and I just wanted to throw him under a bus by then. He came over to me and gave me a big hug and said, "Hey, listen, I forgot his wife's name, but he said, if my wife and I invite you up to Santa Barbara for dinner, you'd come, right?" And I said, "No." He goes, No, I'm the funny guy. Stop being funny. I'm serious. If I invite you up for a dinner, you'll come, right? With your wife? I said, "No, Dennis, I wouldn't come. I wouldn't come anywhere near you. I want nothing to do with you." And I walked away from him. And he yelled after me, "Oh, come on, you'll come. You'll come. If I invite you up for dinner, I know you'll come."
Wow.
And that was the last I ever had anything to do with him.
Gil would be done with Dennis until the reshoots anyway. And there was plenty that needed reshooting. The last day of filming came and went. We were on location, second unit, having the Cypress ski area above West Van stand in for Tierra del Fuego, where at the beginning of the movie, Phil Fondacaro's character digs up Angie's character. When our first AD, Lee Knipperberg, announced that we'd completed principal photography after finishing the martini, a collective shrug went up. A few of us shook hands, but none of us felt like we'd accomplished anything. Survived, maybe, for now. Normally, the producers would have sprung for a wrap party, an important part of the whole filmmaking experience, but we knew for a dead certainty that none of our Canadian crew would show up at any party that the Americans threw, not even for the free liquor. Colleen Neistat, now a Vancouver City Councillor, then our production manager, as usual, came to the rescue.
I did have the wrap party at my house.
I remember because I think I was the only American who showed up. Yeah. I went, and it was awkward.
Well, it's just, it was such a bad show and so hard on so many people.
Bordello was... Reshoots in LA meant we'd get to work with our Tales from the Crypt team, and at the Van Nuys Airport hangars where we'd made the first Tales feature, Demon Knight. Randall Throp was Tales' costume supervisor. These days, he's the manager of the costume and prop archive at Paramount Pictures, his dream job. For the record, I've known Randall longer than I've known anyone else in this story, over 40 years. True fact, we once threw the coolest Tupperware party the Cobble Hill section of Brooklyn has ever seen.
You guys had that office. I think it was on Cahuenga, not far from Universal. And Ed called and said, you got to get over here and look at this, what the editors are looking at. You got to come over and see this. So I came over and the editors showed me that sequence with the vampire prostitutes being sprayed with holy water. And it was unbelievably bad. They looked like blow up sex dolls, like melting. They didn't look like human beings melting once they were sprayed with the holy water. And one of the things that we discovered that the costume department had done for those vampire prostitutes was they put them in a polyester chiffon. You cannot do a stunt with fire in polyester because it melts. It does not catch fire. You have to use natural fibers. So that's when Warden Neil and I, we had to reshop and try to match what they had done in Vancouver with silk chiffon, as opposed to polyester, which became expensive. It's not cheap. And to try to match it, but Lord have mercy.
Maybe the best part of being in LA with our team was having our American production manager, F.A. Miller, back.
We were a very tight group. We all liked each other. And F.A. Miller was the one who really made sure that if you weren't there to have fun or to play and be nice, you were out. It all it took was one bad episode and you were out the door. And all of us always felt like we were kind of cherry picked, because we depended on each other. I depended on Todd. Todd depended on what I could do. Steve Melton, Greg Melton, it was always, we always worked so well together. And I think, Tales from the Crypt was probably the best experience of my career because it was also fun because you were basically shooting a mini movie every week.
I had a situation in Georgia where I did a really super low budget horror comedy called Stand Against Evil for IFC that we did very much like Tales. We did 3-day episodes. We blew up a demon every episode. I blew up a car. I flipped the car for $800,000 an episode, full union. And I had people turning down other work in Atlanta on the hopes that we would get picked up for another season. And then all 3 seasons, we had less than 10 people turn over because of the lessons that I learned from you guys.
Well, FA, I can't give enough credit to FA. I learned so much from FA in the business, not just as a producer, but just in the business. I learned so much from FA, and I learned each year. I appreciated him more and more in his subtle, sort of silent way of going about doing things. He never kept things from me. When there was an issue, he would tell me the issue, and then we would talk it out and figure out what to do. But FA was such a blessing in my life in terms of my career.
And as a crew member, I have to say, FA really did the idea of the open door policy. I mean, I could go in and talk to him, and there's so many times I would go in and just say, "Oh my gosh, we're worn down on this one." It's like, now, darling, just take a break, just breathe. He would always, but he was just, he did have that open door, and he would stop by, he would chat. I mean, he was very, tuned into the crew completely. And like I said, and we all know this, if you didn't fit in, you were gone. And that was, he could clean house really quick. But that was a good thing because then, things got back to normal. First, it was sort of fun to get back together, for this short time. But then as the night went on, it just kind of disintegrated. And I remember Erica wouldn't come out of her trailer. Dennis was pouting, and Chris Sarandon was very nice. I remember that. But we were all pulling our hair out. We're there until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning trying to reshoot that. And that's when I decided I'm done. I'm going back to New York, which is what I did. That was the Bordello of Blood is the film that made me say, I'm not doing this. I'm done. It was my birthday, by the way, and I'm killing vampire prostitutes. I'm dealing with actors who are just jerks and fire stunts. And I just said, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore. Forget the blood, forget everything else. I left. I moved back to New York.
In addition to reshooting and cutting Bordello, Gil and I had to get the final season of Tales ready for production. And right off the bat, there was injury.
Do you remember, Alan, whose idea was it to go to UK? Because it wasn't ours. Was it Joel's or was it Warner? Was it HBO?
There's something in my head said there was still some anger at the union, and there was just one more way to
Yeah.
Because really there was no real reason to do it in London. It was a cool idea. It's London on someone else's dime plus per diem. But if I'm honest, Tales from the Crypt had grown a little long in the tooth, with a fang, whatever. Making the show away from L.A. could have revived what had become bone-weary. Alas, aside from the cool factor, the last season of Tales was a painful extension of Bordello into the Tales world. We didn't go to London because it was a cool idea. We went, as we did with Bordello, to piss off the union representing our crew.
Alan and I were in London setting that up. And then they said, well, you need to come back. And they worked out this schedule between Universal and Warner Brothers. They worked out the schedule that I would be in London for 3 weeks, New York for 3 weeks. Not New York, LA. So I could cut the movie and then I would go for 3 weeks and come back and they would. And so we did that. I mean, Alan, we did that for a long time, right?
Yeah. London, what we started with the feature film, that seems to be when the wheels began to kind of come off, when suddenly some of us got excluded for one reason or another, neither here nor there, but suddenly the team wasn't the team. Bordello of Blood certainly exacerbated that feeling amongst our crew because, man, we left the country.
Yeah.
And then the last season of Crypt comes up and we leave the whole continent.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but you guys entrusted me to go after everybody. And we literally went after everybody. I mean, I remember Daniel Day-Lewis, calling and apologizing because he was doing a kids play in Newcastle. I mean, they were all so nice. Ewan McGregor inviting us to the Train Spotting premiere. Jane Horrocks, inviting us to filming of Ab Fab. It's just so much of, different than here in the States, the way the British actors approached everything. Or Oasis coming and using our stage. Remember when Oasis came and used our stage for the music video?
When we got there, first of all, all these actors who they said, oh, we're going to get all these English actors, which we couldn't get here because we can't fly them over and they'll work for us at Ealing Studios. We found out, no, nobody wanted to work in the UK because of taxes.
Yes, right. Yes.
When we called Lewis Gilbert, who lived in Ealing, and I got his phone number and I called him and I said, I love your work. I want to work. I want you to do. And he goes, oh, my boy, I love Tales from the Crypt. A wonderful show. I love that show. I'd be delighted to direct one. I'm going, wow, this is going to be great. We're going to work with Lewis Gilbert. And I said, Lewis, I'm going to send over a car tomorrow morning, pick you up at your house and bring you over to the studio. And he goes, wait a minute, where are you? I said, I'm in the Ealing Studios. And he went, oh, no, I can't work here. Tax situation. No, I thought you wanted me to come to Los Angeles. And we got the same reaction from Roger Moore. Roger Moore invited us to go to Switzerland. We had so many people say to us, oh, if you were only in LA and you wanted me to come and you'd pay for the flight, I'd be there. And we couldn't, obviously, when we were shooting in LA, we didn't have money for flights like that, so we didn't use them. But when we got to London, we found out, well, we can't get these people anyway.
Yeah, our structure, we were 3 days in, 2 days out. That system did not work there because, you can't build as much there. There's a reason why they use locations so much more. They're great locations, or any kind of great location you want. It's tricky to get to those locations because, London's a very slow city to move around. We bumped into all kinds of problems. Our first English production manager, a nice man with some lovely credits, but he misled us repeatedly.
I don't know if you guys remember, I was the first one there. I got there 3 weeks before you guys, and I was looking for apartments. And Gil, do you remember the Where Are the Makita conversations?
Oh, yeah.
So we had Malcolm, our first production manager.
Malcolm.
Like I said, I was the first one there. I was there 3 weeks before everybody. And I had apartments. I had like 5 apartments for you to look at, Alan, 5 for Gil. I had some for Greg. I had one for Scott. When you guys all got there, Greg came up with the plans to build for the first episode. And like 3 days into prep, Malcolm comes to me and goes, yeah, we're having a hard time with the sets. And Gil walks on the set and sees guys hammering with nails. And he looks around and goes, where are the Makitas? And the guy goes like, what's a Makita?
I remember looking at him. I was so outraged. I went, what's a Makita? What do you mean? It's like a staple gun. You put two pieces of
like boom, 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 boom,
and the set's up. I remember them looking at me like, is he out of his mind? What's he talking about? But I do remember saying bang, 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 and the set's up.
Back in Los Angeles, we were used to our construction crew arriving at our stage with their pickup trucks loaded with tools. In London, our construction crew arrived at Ealing Studios having just gotten off the tube. They didn't bring any tools with them. That was our responsibility.
I remember it was such culture shock for us when Crafty came out with literally tea and cookies, and that was the craft service cart.
Right.
And all the English people were happy, and Gil and I and Scott are like, "What the? What is this?"
Right.
For reference, Joel Silver used to refer to our craft services table at Tales from the Crypt as gum and water. I remember Malcolm and having a conversation with Gil and I around about the first day of production when the question was asked, do we put the biscuit tin down on the cart, or do we hand them out? If we put the biscuit tin down, the lads will take more than one, you know.
I even, how about the conversation, Gil, with Malcolm when we had our standard deal memo, and he's like, looks at us like, you can't have that. It's like, what's wrong with it? It says they can't drink on the job. They all go to the pub at lunch and have a beer.
Right.
So we rewrote it to say no drinking on the job except for a beer at lunch on the company pub.
Yeah. And even then we didn't want to do that. I remember being very resistant to that, going, I don't like this. They're going to come back and they're going to be, you know.
And you go into the canteen and our whole crew was in there having a pint.
Yeah.
It was such culture shock. And when we did do catering, the double-decker buses, you know, for food was just so odd. It was just so odd. And the food was horrible.
Do you remember, Ed? I suspect you'll remember this because I remember it rather vividly, that we got a phone call. We needed to bring out another bus for lunch. What happened to the bus? We have a double-decker bus for lunch. He goes, yeah, we can't use it. They threw up in it. And I was like, what? Yeah, the crew threw up. And I go, the crew? I mean, was it one person, two people? Well, more than two people. Well, what happened? Well, I think the food was off. And I'm like, what? I mean, do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. Sadly, I do.
When you were talking about the double-decker bus, that image just came back to me because I remember going out there and seeing throw up all over the bus going, holy shit, what the fuck is this all about?
It's funny, the little things that you remember, the little tiny snippets.
Yeah.
I remember when Bill Malone was directing and you and Alan had gone home and you had left me to close. And you had told me that, pull the plug at 10 p.m. And Bill needed like 2 shots left. And the first AD comes up to me and says, we're probably going to go till 10:30. And I said, no, I'm pulling the plug at 10. He goes, no, we'll get to work, but it'll take till 10:30. I said, no, we're pulling the plug at 10. And he goes, you're an assistant. You can't do that. And Bill Malone looks at him and goes, yeah, he can. Yeah, he can. He's speaking for Gil and Alan. He can do that. And yeah. Bill looks at me. It's like, calm. He goes, I'll get it, Ed. Don't worry. 10 o'clock. We're good.
He got it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He got it. Yeah.
The last season of Crypt was subpar. Mea culpa. I took my eye off the Tales from the Crypt ball to focus on the new Tales from the Crypt-like show HBO had ordered from the Crypt Partners based on all the old EC science fiction comics. I'd been pitching ideas about it with no luck. I figured we'd sort out what the show was when we got back to LA, except that's not what happened. It turned out Joel had other plans, and they didn't include me. Alan Kassir, our manager, called me one morning while the negotiations were still ongoing. He said, I need you to come to my office. So I went to his office in Century City. He wanted to tell me in person that Joel decided he doesn't want you to do it. He's not going to negotiate with you anymore. And that was it. I said, but Gil is still doing it. He said, oh yeah, he wants Gil. That was hard. Mm-hmm. And I took it rather personally. There was a moment, I think it was a day or two later, I guess, and I don't know what precipitated this phone call, but for some reason, I was sitting in my house in Los Feliz, and I get a message being left that Joel Silver and Bob Zemeckis are calling me. And for the life of me, in retrospect, I can't imagine why I didn't pick up the phone or return their call, but I did not. Now I know why. I was so angry.
Right.
I was beyond any reason, but I would be willing to bet if I picked up the phone and had an adult conversation, I would be willing to bet that I would not have been completely cut off the way that I was. Scott Nimmerfro told me a couple years long after the fact that I kind of took it the wrong way because it wasn't the intention wasn't to cut me off, that there were a couple of those horror movies that you all did where Joel would have been quite open to me working on them, but I never returned a call. Now, that's not what he said. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. I don't know
either, to tell you the truth. I mean,
I don't know why suddenly I was singled out as the problem, but it must have been because I was the one who was sent packing. For me, it presented a problem. All my produced work, hey, everything I'd written for a decade had two names on it. And going out into the marketplace, suddenly I was nobody and nothing. And the problem with having two names on a script is, you know, when you hand it to someone, the first question they're going to ask you, it's a perfectly good question. Well, how much of this did you write? And so I was stuck literally having to go back to square one in a sense, because Alan Kassira was he tried to get me to do really the one thing that I should have done in that moment. Hey, Scott Nimmerfro, in a moment like that, I know what Scott would have done. He'd have sat down and he'd have written a script. Mm-hmm. You want to know who I am as a writer? I'll show you. But I was experiencing the very beginning of a writer's block, because unless I was being paid, I had no interest in writing. And I was interested in writing whatever the man wanted. Hey, what do you want me to write? So I put myself into a really dumb place. The shortest answer to solve my problem was to sit down and write a goddamn script. You know, when I approached you and I said, I need to take your name off our scripts, that was a problem. And I can understand why that was a problem. I think that might have been part of why we became acrimonious. I think you resented me asking to do that.
I can't remember that was what it was. I just remembered being very disappointed and just being very like, I don't understand why did this happen? And then if it did happen, why don't we continue on?
Yeah.
And to tell you the truth, you know, I wish I would have known that Bob and Joel called you, because I would have jumped in there. You know, because I had conversations with Joel, which were not, you know, very nice, to the point where I was convinced, you know, he was going to throw me out of the office as well. Because I said, what the fuck are you doing? You know, what does this got to do with you? This has nothing to do with you. Why? And he never gave me a real answer that answered the question satisfactorily or even unsatisfactorily. You know, my relationship with Bob got stronger and stronger. I used to always say to Bob, I don't understand. I just don't understand. Steve D'Souza and Peter Iliff became really good friends of mine along the way. I used to talk to Steve more than I would Peter. You know, his stories about writing or rewriting
Die Hard.
Yeah. His stories about that are just, I mean, unbelievable. And his relationship with Joel as in that writing process and the pressure and all that. Yeah. And even talking to him didn't really help me any, because he didn't understand it. I never quite understood what was motivation, what was the purpose. And I would often ask Bob, and Bob didn't want to deal with it, you know, because he would just blow it off and say, well, you know, Joel, it's Joel, you know, he likes to divide and conquer. He likes to do this. He likes to do that.
Yeah.
I never really got to the bottom of it with him.
Divide and conquer is there's something to that. In retrospect, you know, as I look back at Joel tried repeatedly to offer me things. Joel handed me his copy of the Sandman graphic novel. He put that into my hands personally. He said, you should read this. Now, when Joel Silver hands you a piece of material, he's saying, read this and get back to me.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Why would you not read that and get back to me? And I did not. Now, in part, I thought because, you know, why are you offering this to me? I work, you know, Gil and I are a team. And so I saw that as, no. But I think there's some truth to that I think Joel just thought differently. And I think Joel didn't care about, you guys think you're a team. It's neither here nor there to me. You know, I'll use you as I need to use you for my own ends, which is perfectly understandable.
Because also I've seen, also after that, I would see him do stuff like you just said, offer it to one guy, only to have it come back and them do it together. After the fact, that when they came up with an idea or pitched the story, and he went, "Oh, that's fantastic."
Yeah. I heard from Nimmerfro that Joel didn't have a particular problem with me. He's a disruptor by nature.
Yeah.
And, he just thrown a monkey wrench. There was nothing more than that in it. It's not like there was an idea he had that was better. He's disruptive.
Yeah.
And hey, man, that's who he is, for better and sometimes for worse.
The thing that I sort of missed terribly was just getting together every day and doing the work. That's the thing I missed the most. And a lot of it, I blame myself because, why didn't I pick up that phone and call you and say, what the fuck, what's going on here? What's going on between us? Forget Joel, forget everybody else. Who gives a shit about anybody else? And I didn't. And I don't know why I didn't, except I know I got very busy with work and I was very worried about working.
Sure.
But even I can't blame it on that, because I go, no, you're bigger than that and you're better than that. And why didn't you? Why? And I don't have an answer for that.
And so the Crypt team went one way and I went the other.
Joel called me one day and he said, you got to go have lunch with Bob. So you guys talk and come up with a show. So I called Bob, and Bob was over at Universal. I said, listen, Bob, I don't know what to tell Joel. What are we going to do? And he said, I tell you what, just come on over. I'll get deli from Jerry's. I'll get chocolate chip cookies. We both like that. And we'll have lunch and we'll talk. And then I'll call Joel and I'll say, we had a nice talk, but we didn't come up with anything. I said, great. That's good. Okay, let's do that. So I go over, have lunch with Bob. And while we're talking, we're talking about our youth and what we liked and what we didn't like. And I was saying like, well, I kind of liked Outer Limits, like the gallery.
Night gallery.
Yeah. And he said, yeah. And he said, I like this and that. And I said, yeah. And why did we like that? Why did we like that as kids? I said, well, it was different. It was weird. It was quirky. It was, it was unexpected. Yeah. I felt the same way. And so we finished our lunch. We finished our cookies and I go, okay, Bob, I'm going to go. Don't forget to call Joel. And he goes, no, I'll take care of it. So I go home, and that night about 8:30 in the evening, the phone rings and it's Joel. And he goes, what the fuck is the matter with you? I go, what did I do now? He goes, why don't you tell me what's going on? And I go, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, I got off the phone with Bob and I had to call Bob. He didn't call me. And I had to say, what happened to you and Gil? And he said, well, I want Gil to tell you. So tell me what it is. So I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, tell me the idea. Bob said you had a really good idea. Tell me the idea. So I go, well, Joel, we had a few of them. So let me check with Bob and I'll call you back. Let me just call Bob. And I call Bob and I go, Bob, are you out of your mind? I got Joel calling me, asking me, what's the idea? We don't have an idea. There is no idea. And he starts to laugh and he goes, well, why don't you tell him, it was like what we said about our youth. We like this and we like that. It was twisted. It was this and that. And it was funny, but it was scary. And then just say, we're working on it. And then he'll leave us alone. So I go, Bob, I thought you were going to talk to him. Just call him back. So I call up Joel and I tell him, and there's a silence after I speak. And he goes, I love it. Let's do it. What do you mean? He goes, I'm going to call Chris Albrecht and set up a meeting for you, me, and Bob. And I'm going, Joel, click. I call Bob back. Bob goes, don't worry about it. It'll go nowhere. It'll die. 2 days later, I got a call from Joel. You, Bob, and I have a meeting with Chris Albrecht at HBO to pitch this new show. And I go, Bob, there's no show. You and I know there's no show. So how are we going to pitch? So he goes, Chris has always been a big fan of yours. He'll understand what you're saying. He'll see that there's no show. And he'll probably say, we should work on it some more and come back. Don't worry about it. So now we go over to Chris Albrecht's office and it's the three of us. And, Chris is waiting for someone to start the meeting. And so they go, tell him. I go, tell him? Yeah, Bob, tell him. So I go, well, it's this idea and I tell him and Chris Albrecht gets up from his desk and was on the 41st floor in Century City. He looks out the window towards the ocean and pauses for a minute and turns around and he goes, let's do it. And I'm like, let's do what? And he goes, the show you just told me. I go, well, what do you mean, let's do it? And he goes, we'll do 10. And Joel goes, yes, that's terrific. Yes. And everybody's congratulating everybody. And I'm like sweating. I have no idea what we're talking about. And I take the elevator down with Bob, just the two of us. And I go, Bob, what are we going to do? I mean, you and I better get together and talk about what this is, because I don't know what we sold, and I don't know what their expectation is. And Bob looks at me and he goes, Gil, I'm going to be busy for a while. I'm making this movie Contact. So you're kind of on your own. And I said, but Bob, but there is no show. I mean, be candid with me, Bob. You know, there is no show. And he goes, yeah, you'll figure it out. And that's how Perversions happened.
Bordello missed its Halloween 1995 opening. Instead, Universal dumped the movie the following August, The Doldrums, where unloved movies go to die. I don't know what the rest of y'all did, but I put together a little theater party. It was me, my wife, Aubrey Morris, and one or two other friends, and we went to a movie theater in Burbank for the premiere of Bordello of Blood, and there was nobody in that movie theater. That was that was so sad. That was I went out to the ticket booth and I said, has it been like this all day? And she went, yep.
Janet and I went on Sunday, and it was kind of the same thing. We saw it at the Plant in Van Nuys. It was a pretty big theater, and there was probably 10 of us in there, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I was the only wise one who didn't go to any screenings of it. I remember saying to Jeannie, we gave it the office. I can't give any more. So I'm not going.
Soon enough, Bordello appeared smaller and smaller in everyone's rearview mirror. These are talented people. They never stopped working. And Randall didn't stay in New York all that long.
6 months later, I got a call to do the remake of The Shining, and in Colorado. And so I was like, okay, fine, I'll come back to LA.
I worked with Gil until House on Haunted Hill, and then when my late wife died, I left. I actually went and lived with Glenn's family in England for 4 months after that. And Gil got me to come back into the business in 2004 on Starsky and Hutch. He called me out of the blue and said, I got an assistant that I need to replace. And would you come work for me? And I wasn't doing it. I said, absolutely, Gil, I'd love to. And we did that and Constantine together. And then he went off to do Superman, and my dad was sick and I couldn't leave at the time. And my dad ended up dying. And then he went off to do Superman in Australia. And that was the last time we actually, worked together side by side.
Of everyone on the Crypt team, Greg Melton came out the healthiest by a lot.
Kind of goes back to even like the, almost the studio system. I think there was a lot of people making movies they didn't want to make. They were stuck in contracts and they did.
Yes,
I remember like with Dead Easy, I'm like, we're doing Dead Easy. Oh, we're not doing Dead Easy. We're doing Bordello of Blood. I just switched over. Like, that's just where we're going. I didn't really stop and go, is this the right thing to do? It's way above me. This is where the train's moving. I've got to stay on the train. I'm the easiest person to replace,
Yet the hardest in so many ways.
I look back on it all, and it's all just sort of like was wonderful. I had fun up there. I was getting to build a lot of stuff. I was working with people that were very supportive and creative. We were getting things done.
How dare you have a good time on that movie, Greg?
I'm sorry, but I'm just saying that I just look back on it. I obviously had a much different experience. You were really in the trenches, of like, I know what goes on. I read the emails that Frank would send AMC that got him fired.
That's Frank Darabont, another Crypt alum, getting fired from The Walking Dead, the show he developed and executive produced. Greg was Walking Dead's production designer from 2010 to 2012. He helped create the show's look. He's a real big part of its success.
I'm so glad I don't have to deal with any of that. I'm just down. I've got my little department. We'll do this. I'll pick some colors. Everybody will be happy.
I'll pick some colors. Oh my God, you're making me realize I've done this all wrong. Colleen Neistat's perspective.
I had never, ever experienced, and I've been around, extreme personalities, but Joel stands out. But I lived through it. I mean, this is one of the things I think, if I could live through that show, if I could survive that show, I can certainly survive a political campaign.
My perspective of Joel, it might be a little bit different in the sense that, I spent probably close to 15 years of my life working with and for him.
Yep.
There's a part of me that's very grateful to him for giving me the opportunity, giving us the opportunity on Tales, and then going further with me on some of these other things. And then it all ended rather abruptly when, he one day threatened, I was coming back from Ghost Ship in Australia, and he said, I have our next movie to do, Gothica. And I said, well, no, I just got a call from Lorenzo de Bonaventura, who was running Warner Brothers at the time. And he said, look, we want you to do bigger movies for us. I have 3 scripts I'm sending you. You can do any one of them. And I said, okay, well, I'm leaving Australia, but I'm going to Tahiti for a week. So I'll be back in 10 days. And he said, great, read them and just tell them which one you want to do. 15 minutes later, I get a call from Joel. And he says to me, you're doing Gothica. We're doing Gothica. And, if not, you'll never work in this town again. And I'll make sure Warner Brothers, on and on and on, right out of Sunset Boulevard. Mm-hmm. And so I said to him, I'm not doing any more of these movies where I don't have a substantial ownership interest, because he wouldn't give me ownership in the movies. And he totally blamed it on Bob. He said, well, the problem isn't with me. The problem is with Bob. Bob doesn't want you to have any ownership. And I said, are you kidding me? I know Bob better than I know you.
Yeah,
and
no, that don't fly.
I go up to his office at Universal because he gets deli sandwiches from Al's, and we have lunch and we just chat about stuff, shows and what we like and what we don't like. So I said, this is not coming from Bob. This is coming from you. And then finally, when I came back, I went over to his office. He was on a plane going to New York. So I said, okay, well, tell him I'm back. And I want to continue the conversation we had last week, because I said to him, Joel, there's no sense in arguing over the phone. I'll be back in a week and we'll sit down and we'll talk. You're doing this movie. You call Lorenzo back and you tell him you're not doing anything for him. You only work for me. So when I got back, he was on a plane. I went into his brand new office, which used to be Dick Donner's. And then when Dick left, they gave it to Joel. They redesigned it and remodeled it. Beautiful place.
They turned it into a Frank Lloyd Wright palace.
Yeah. And so they said, I went in there. They said, oh, Joel's on a plane. I said, okay, just tell him I called. He should call me when he gets back in a week, whenever. I start walking to my car and they come running out of the office saying, come back. We have Joel on the phone. He's on the plane and he just checked in. We told him he wants to talk to you right away. So I go in and they put me in his office, his brand new office. And I'm sitting at his desk talking to him on his phone. And he's screaming and yelling at me about how, I don't care if you're back. I told you last week what it is. You're doing Gothica, and on and on. And I said, Joel, the one thing you should know about me after 15 years is don't give me an ultimatum. If you give me an ultimatum, I'll tell you to go fuck yourself. So just don't do that. When you come back, we'll sit down and we'll talk it through. And he kept going. He kept going there and he kept saying, you have to say yes before I hang up. And finally got to the point. I said to him, if you keep saying this to me, I'm going to tell you to go fuck yourself. And he did it one more time. And I just yelled into the phone, fuck you. And I smashed the phone down so hard. I broke the phone. I thought I broke my fist. And I walked out of there so heated and went to my car and just went home. That's sort of how it ended between Joel and myself, because then thereafter I started doing bigger pictures with Warner Brothers.
For a run of years, Gil produced Warner Brothers' biggest tentpole movies. Starsky and Hutch, $170 million at the box office. Constantine, starring Keanu Reeves and Rachel Weisz, $231 million. Superman Returns, $391 million. And Valkyrie, which Gil made with Tom Cruise and Kenneth Branagh, good for another $231 million. And then Gil stopped. We'll get to why. Finally, there was me. In hindsight, the Bordello experience set off something. It exacerbated a problem I didn't know I had at the time: bipolarity and depression. As anyone who's ever experienced that darkness knows, depression robs you above all of perspective. You can be deep into one and not even know that's your problem. And if the deep down reason for the depression and everything that comes with it is, say, a secret you've denied, well, nothing good can come of that. For a while, I struggled. After a year of telling me to write something for Pete's sake and getting nothing, my manager Alan Kassir fired me too. I struggled some more until Scott Nimmerfro introduced me to the guy who'd be my agent for the next decade, Nick Mechanic. Nick's a podcast unto himself, but Nick believed in me. He got me onto The Outer Limits, where for 2 years I thrived. Now here's the thing. We made The Outer Limits up in Vancouver. When I returned to Vancouver in 1999 as a co-executive producer, people still remembered Bordello, and not in a nice way. I had to prove to quite a few of our crew that I wasn't then the same asshole I'd been on Bordello. The Outer Limits years were good creatively and financially. Hell and I started our family. Our son Tristan was born in Vancouver, and then Tristan's sister Bianca was born in Los Angeles. For a while, I contemplated getting naturalized up in Canada. That's where all the TV work was at the time. But my wife and kids weren't going to move with me to Vancouver. If I wanted a TV career, I'd have to fly to see my family on the weekends. I chose my family. For almost the next 20 years, I stopped being a writer and producer and became a full-time dad. Best gig I'll ever have, bar none. My son loved playing soccer and basketball, which I coached. Hell, I even started a whole club team for my son to play on. Even being a dad, I still had to do things big. Also, I coached a lot of ultimate frisbee, a great game that's entirely self-officiating. This being Silver Lake and Highland Park, among the players I coached in ultimate were Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas. For real. Phineas is very good. But my self-loathing depression continued to feast on me. With me not working much anymore and expenses high, the money soon ran out. We lost our house, the one Tails bought for us. We went bankrupt. 3 days before Christmas 2016, a month after Trump got elected, I came within literal inches of killing myself. Here's the public service part of the podcast. Immediately afterwards, I drove straight to my GP and I told him what had happened. I'd been contemplating medication, but frankly, it scared the shit out of me. I'd done some research and I'd found a mood stabilizer that I hoped would work for me. My GP whipped out his smartphone and concurred. He wrote the script. That night, I told my family what I intended to do. They were grateful I was finally doing something about it because my self-directed rage was doing everyone harm. And that's when I got really, really lucky. Within 36 hours of taking that first 25 milligram dose of lamotrigine, I leveled. I literally felt the depression lose its grip on me. And I started to get healthy for the first time since I was 14, it turns out. You see, I've been keeping a secret from myself that at 14, I was molested twice by the religious director at the synagogue in northwest Baltimore where my family belonged. Dealing with that 45 years after the fact was damned hard. But I came out the other side. Like I said, I bounced. I became born again, not in a religious sense, in a life sense. I started to write again. Boy, did I. Suddenly, my head was filled with stories. I started to tweet and blog. I started my Faiththeism Project podcast with my friend Randy Lovejoy. He's a Presbyterian pastor, and I'm a devout atheist. We have some really amazing conversations. You should check it out. And then one day, Ed Tapia called me. We'd been in communication all along, and Ed told me that Gil was sick. He had cancer, kidney. And so I reached for the phone.
You know, when I was diagnosed with cancer, you called me, and that meant the world to me. I mean, you have no idea how much that meant to me after all the time that we hadn't spoken, and out of the blue, I get you call me, and
Well,
we had a nice conversation.
We did.
But then nothing happened after that. I sort of lost life for like 10 years as well, because I got involved with veterans. I got involved with this one young man who wrote a book called Fat Tuesday. And we were developing it and working on that. And then he flew to San Antonio and committed suicide. So when I read that in the New York Times that he had committed suicide, I just went into a tiff and just spiraled out of control and also questioned my interest and desire to help, or was I really helping anybody in terms of the veteran world? And so that, between the cancer and that, I just sort of, I guess, spiraled out of awareness of where I was for like many years.
I hear you. I hear you. I know how that can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And time suddenly gets lost when you're deep inside your own head for whatever reason that you are deep inside your head. And until you resolve it, if you can resolve it one way or the other, you can stay there.
Well, I had no interest in making television or movies. I mean, I would get these calls from Warner Brothers about the tentpole pictures that I had been making for them. And I would just say, no. I mean, I wouldn't even explain. I would just say, I can't do that. I know. It was a very strange, experience going through that. Not the same as what you went through. I think what you went through was even harder. But I never quite understood. And years passed after that, and I never, understood why we didn't continue from that. why we didn't build something from that. And I blame myself. You called me about the cancer.
Well, everything in its time. So I'm working on a bunch of film and TV projects trying to reinvent myself. My current manager, Jeff Field, took me on as I kid you not, a reclamation project. I think through Twitter, I first made the acquaintance of Jason and the Dads from the Crypt podcast team. They review episodes of Tales from the Crypt and give parenting advice. It's genius. Jason wanted to interview me about a Crypt episode. I forget which, but the interview went great. And Jason said, hey, we're going to do a podcast about Bordello of Blood. Do you want to do another interview? And I said, well, Jason, Bordello is more than just a one-off interview. Bordello is more like a whole podcast unto itself. And here we are. Getting back in touch with everyone, Gil especially, well, that produced the biggest twist of all. My mind is boggled by this podcast and how this podcast happened, the almost incidental way in which it suddenly came together, and what doing this podcast has unleashed. I'm stunned, delighted. I could not be happier. And to learn along the way that it's a story that really we all wanted to tell. Certain things have to happen for other things to happen. And I know in order for us to renew our relationship, I know I had to get past certain things. I couldn't start this until I was ready. Now I'm ready, and more than ready. And look at what we're doing as a result. We slip right back into a creative relationship. It's like we never left.
It's true. And it's very gratifying.
What really surprised me is when I told other people, who are part of our circle, that we were talking regularly. And that just thrilled people to know that we were talking again. Other people thought, well, that's good. It's about fucking time.
We better do it now because we don't have that much more time to.
But at our back, we always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near.
Yes.
Life is so strange, so unpredictable. It's a lot like a really good movie. That's why it's worth sticking around. You just can't tell where it's going. And even when you think you've got it all sussed, you don't.
A couple of years ago, like 6 years ago, I called up Gil and I said, hey, you want to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Bordello of Blood with me? And we had been invited by a local theater in Vancouver to screen it. It was actually the 20th anniversary. And I had stayed in touch with Gil, but talking about Bordello of Blood was kind of that subject we had never broached. It was like one of those, like, let's just leave that behind us and have a new friendship, And so I didn't talk to him about it. And then all of a sudden this opportunity arose, the Rio Theater in Vancouver, which is like this really amazing place that they pride themselves on. What do they call it? The experience you cannot download. And it's like, wow, they want to show the movie and Gil lives here. We got to do this. And so I invited Gil to come over, and I believe you did a Q&A, didn't you?
Yeah, I did a little Q&A before and a big Q&A after.
It was pretty cool. And it's a fun movie with a crowd, especially if they're shit-faced.
Yeah, right.
And the Rio does sell booze, so that helps.
Good,
and I think Ed snuck us some joints over the border. But anyway,
that, believe it or not, blows our minds. Despite the soul-crushing, relationship-ending, career-threatening process of making Bordello of Blood, the audience just doesn't care. Not one iota. Hey, you remember I mentioned coaching ultimate frisbee? Well, here's a funny twist that'll bring the whole concoction around. Like I said, ultimate self-officiating. There are rules, but not a ton. And one day I needed to look up a rule, and so I went online to do it. And I discovered something that also blew my mind, and I think it's going to blow yours. Know who invented ultimate frisbee? Joel Silver. No shit. You can look it up. There's just no escaping the guy. So like we said, there's a happy ending to the story. Although maybe ending isn't really the right word. I mean, how can it be an ending when there's still so much to do and so much going on? Maybe what we've got here is more of a happy continuation after an unfortunate interruption. In the weeks ahead, Gil and I will share more and more details about the streaming horror series we're taking out into the marketplace. Are You Afraid is going to be wicked fun. It's about flesh-eating ghouls, you are who you eat. More details coming very, very soon. See you next time. How Not to Make a Movie podcast is executive produced by me, Alan Katz, by Gil Adler, and by Jason Stein. Our artwork was done by the amazing Jody Webster, and Jason and Jody, along with Mando, are all the hosts of the fun and informative Dads from the Crypt podcast. Follow them for what my old pal the Crypt Keeper would have called terrific crypt content.